development in Stockton and other cities like Stockton across the country, exploring their local and regional impacts. Individual efforts play a role in third city development, and it starts with you.
What's up, everybody? This is your boy Marcellus.
This is your girl Ronnie.
It's Tim Hawley.
And Al X.
And we're coming at you with the KXVS
Morning Show.
Do you want to relive the golden days of Stockton? Join Nate Knott on Stockton Alive every first and third Monday at 6 p.m. Tune into thevoiceofstockton.org.
KXVS on 92.1. Coming soon. Hi everyone, this is Dr. Julie Dameron, local veterinarian for over 20 years. I am so excited about my new radio show, Tales and Tips, on Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, Voice of Stockton, and KXVS Radio. I will discuss relevant issues affecting animals and pet owners today, how to avoid common problems, and how to extend the quality of life for your cherished companions. As a community advocate, I will also discuss important social issues that affect our city. I plan to showcase organizations and heroes who are doing amazing things to help others. Remember to tune in every Tuesday morning at 10, starting soon.
Attention, Stockton. Are you experiencing a transition in business, relationships, health, or your life purpose? I'm Darius Oliver, and I help people to look within and find clarity and direction in their constantly changing lives. Tune in and listen with me as I go deep into your patterns and personal cycles through divine numerology. Any life transition you're experiencing can be illuminated by an in-depth analysis of your chart. For the first time in Stockton, you now have access to a professional numerologist here to help you light your own way. I'm in the booth to help you find your own truth. Tune in to Divine Numerology every Friday at 3 p.m. on The Voice of Stockton.
The Third City Podcast is a production of Third City Coalition. In our show, we examine case studies in urban development in Stockton and other cities like Stockton across the country, exploring their local and regional impacts. Individual efforts play a role in third city development, and it starts with you.
What's up, everybody? This is your boy Marcellus.
This is your girl Ronnie.
It's Tim Hawley.
And Al X.
And we're coming at you with the KXVS
Morning Show.
Do you want to relive the golden days of Stockton? Join Nate Knott on Stockton Alive every first and third Monday at 6 p.m. Tune into thevoiceofstockton.org.
KXVS, The Voice of Stockton Live. The Voice of Stockton at Stone Soup Studio. KXVS.org.
This program does not reflect the views of KXVS management or KXVS, The Voice of Stockton.
Welcome to the Monday afternoon show at 3 o'clock, the Vigil show. I would like to welcome Connie O'Day, my co-host.
Hello, Doug, and hello, everybody.
For helping me to come and talk to today, a very unique guest is Alec Breitler. He's a Stockton reporter, and he's going to be talking about the environment. So take it away, Connie.
Well, first of all, he's a reporter for the Stockton Record, our local newspaper. And welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me. This is fun.
And from what I understand, that you are a reporter with basically the environment issues. So could you tell us a little bit about that and a little bit about yourself, how you got into reporting, and how long you've been with the Stockton Record, and then what you're doing with the environment, and perhaps we can go into some of the issues that are around here.
Sure. Well, I always loved to write. When I was a kid, that was my big thing. I loved writing. And when I went to college, I took a few journalism classes, and it was something that just really kind of clicked for me.
Good, yep.
That's good. You know, there's a lot of jobs that involve writing, but in journalism you have a lot more flexibility to write about things that are interesting and even creative sometimes, which I really appreciate. And then the fact that you get to, you know, get out of the office and go and do some fun things outside.
So you get out in the field.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I like that too.
Go out on the Delta for a day or something. I don't do that as much as I used to, but, you know, every day in journalism is usually a little bit different than the day before.
Let me tell our audience, because so many of you are in other cities, other states, probably other countries, but the Delta Waterway is here in California. It begins from the Pacific Ocean in San Francisco Bay and comes right up, clear up to our capital in Sacramento. But here in Stockton, the Delta also leads into our Port of Stockton. And I believe we are the nation's deepest deep water inland port in the United States or in California. So our Delta waterways is extremely important here and is a big environmental issue. So,
and I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people in Stockton, even though we're right on the edge of the Delta, and about half of Stockton residents live within the legal boundaries of the Delta.
That's exactly
right.
A
lot of people do not have an understanding of what the Delta is. You know, if you don't, most of it is private farmland.
Right.
And if you don't have a boat, your access to the Delta is very limited. And so a lot of folks in town do not have a real solid understanding of what the Delta is or why it's important. So I'm glad you give that little introductory primer.
Yes. So go ahead and tell us what some of the things that you do report on, and maybe what you're working on presently.
Sure. Well, so I've been in Stockton for about 12 years. And in Stockton, the number one environment issue really always is the Delta.
Right.
You know, there are a lot of problems out there. As we know, anyone who lives in Stockton and has been out on the Delta knows that the water, you know, there are pollution problems.
And what about the plant hyacinth?
Oh, yeah. Water hyacinth, the plant that floats on top of the water and frustrates all of the boaters. They had to cancel the lighted boat parade for a couple of years. I think it was 2 years. And that's back now, and things have improved a little bit. But algae blooms in the Delta. You know, you go down there sometimes in the summertime when it's real hot and the water stinks and it's this putrid green color.
Right.
So the Delta has a lot of problems because it's at the bottom of the bathtub here in the Central Valley. So all of the water that's coming down from the reservoirs in the foothills and from basically all of the rivers that come into the Central Valley, all that water dumps into the Delta, and it picks up pollutants along the way. And some of that is from water that drains off of farmers' fields, you know, farmers who use pesticides and fertilizer, all those kinds of things. There's also the storm water, the rainwater, that goes down the gutter in the city. And, you know, all of us who drive a car, you know, and we're dripping some kind of fluid from our car or whatever.
Right.
Well, where do people think that goes?
So when it rains, that goes into the water that goes into the
straight
Delta.
into the Delta.
Right.
And in fact, usually when we have the first big rain of the season, you know, October, November, whenever it is, and all of that stuff that has accumulated on our streets all goes down the gutter all at once, and we have a big fish kill somewhere in the city. Sometimes it might be in Smith Canal, or it might be in the Calaveras River, but all of these fish turn up dead.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like clockwork every year, it seems like.
Well, what about the one when the rain, acid rain, when all the smoke and all the dry weather? Even my car got all those dirt on the hood. And I don't look forward to seeing that in the first day of rain. Anyway, I stay in the house, so I don't get that whatever chemical thing that in the air too as well, right?
Yeah, I mean,
our breathing too.
I haven't seen any studies on that, but I can tell you that the pollutants that water picks up off the ground.
On the ground, I thought up in the air.
Right. Well, but it's also picking up all of this stuff that's on the ground that has accumulated over the course of the summer. You know, if you drive a car or if you put fertilizer on your lawn,
right,
or you know, there's any number of ways that we can cause these problems. So the Delta has a lot of issues, and there are a lot of reasons for that, and all of us share some degree of responsibility for that.
So in other words, you're saying that the water is like a toilet, and they're like fighting the water to clean it, or they're trying to what? Using that as a commodity, or because water is life. So what are they trying to do is to make money off of water that we have a right to have that access?
Right. Well, I think what you're starting to talk about is this issue of water exports from the Delta.
Okay.
And that is one of the other problems that the Delta faces, is that its water is oversubscribed. It's been promised to a lot of different people. And, you know, we send Delta water as far south as San Diego. You know, it irrigates millions of acres of farmland here in the San Joaquin Valley, south of Stockton, but it also goes all the way over the Tehachapi's down into LA and San Diego, where it serves millions and millions of people. So 2/3 of the state drinks at least some Delta water. So there's this big
and it's
issue.
going out to the deserts too, for farmers to start farming in our desert area.
They are farming in areas that are dry, yes.
Right.
So another stressor that the Delta faces is the sheer amount of water that is taken out of it.
Well, there's a lot of islands in the Delta, small islands, and a lot of farmers are farming those islands. And there are islands where salt water from San Francisco Bay and from the Pacific Ocean have come up into the Delta and have polluted, the salt water has polluted these islands so badly that the only thing that can be used on the island is feeding goats. And I know that that's happened many years ago, and I don't know what extent it is now. I don't know if you know anything about that aspect of what's happening on the Delta.
Well, the salt, maybe we should explain this for folks. So the water that comes into the Delta, if it flows out of the Delta, if it remains in the Delta, right, and it flows naturally out to San Francisco Bay, then that helps to repel salt water that would otherwise come up from the bay.
Right.
Because the whole area is influenced by the tides, and if you don't have fresh water coming into the Delta, then the salt water kind of creeps up, as you alluded to, creeps up into the Delta. And that's a big problem. It's a problem for farmers.
Right.
But it's also a problem for all those folks down there in LA and San Diego, because you can't, salt water is, that's a big problem.
Yes, and as they're taking the good water out, you don't have as much good water pushing back where it would push the salt water out, and that's part of the problem.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and it's not just the water that is being exported south. It's also the upstream diversions that take place on the Sacramento River, on the American River, on our own Calaveras River.
Right.
That is water that you're taking out of the system that otherwise would flow through the Delta. So when you put those two things together, the upstream diversions and then the exports down south, you're looking at huge volumes of water that are taken out of the Delta every year. Scientists have looked at this from a fish perspective.
Right.
And it's their opinion that most of the time, the Delta is basically in a state of drought. The ecosystem, because so much water is extracted.
Right.
That even in a normal year, what for us is a normal year with normal rainfall, snow up in the Sierras, even in a normal year, it's a drought for the Delta ecosystem because so much water is taken out of it. So it is a big problem. Now, on the other hand, you do have years like this past winter when we just about got flooded out.
Right.
And there's a ton of water coming through the Delta, and you practically have, it's almost a miracle that we didn't have any major island levee failures this past winter. So there are years when there's enough for everyone, but it seems like more and more that's becoming a challenge.
Well, when you start dividing something up to more and more, like you're talking about people or areas or different types of causes or whatever, you're going to lose the real value of something. And of the Delta, there's a lot of business around the Delta. A lot of fishing business, boating business, marinas, and a lot of little small towns. And they're all suffering and they're all worried about what's going to happen with our Delta water. And the fishermen, this is one of the best places in the world for fishing. The striped bass and all of the other fish that we have here in the Delta. Fishermen are having a very hard time catching good, healthy fish. Right. Because of all the pollution. And then if we lose part of the Delta, like I said, the Delta is the deepest inland port here in Stockton. The port of Stockton is huge. Port of Stockton provides products for all over the United States, and plus they export a lot of products that goes all over the world. We have ships coming in here from everywhere. And that is a huge industry that is being affected by the Delta if we lose bad water and if we lose all the water.
I mean, it is tidal. The Delta is tidal, so there will always be water there. I think some people think of this issue with sending water south and they think that the Delta is literally going to dry up, right? And that will never happen because the Delta is tidal. So if you're taking the fresh water out of the Delta, it will be replaced by salt water.
Yeah, that's the problem. And then it's going to kill all our fish. And
it will certainly change. If that were to happen more regularly, it would change the kind of fish that we have here.
What about Clear Lake that had a lot of mercury on their water? Is Delta going to be the same way, the water Delta as well? Mercury?
We already have problems with mercury.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so the mercury is the mercury.
Explain what mercury is for people that don't know about what the water
and where it comes from. That.
Yeah, so it was used during the gold rush. It was used in the process to extract gold, and it became mobilized in the water, and basically it's in the sediment at the bottom of the channel. Okay.
And still there.
It's still there, yeah. Oh. I would have to look this up, but I believe that most of our local Delta waterways are officially listed by the state as being what they call impaired by mercury. In other words, it's just one of a number of pollutants.
Okay.
There's lots of others as well, but the concern with mercury is that it can become established in the food chain.
Right.
So the tiny little organisms at the bottom of the channel can develop high levels of methyl mercury, which is the form that accumulates. And then the fish gobble up those smaller creatures, and then it starts to build up in the fish as well.
And can it get into the water that's used in the agricultural business?
I don't know that mercury is a concern for application to crops. I don't know. It's a good question.
Because if it's in the water and the water is used to grow the crops from the Delta and then people eat it,
right,
then whatever was in the water would be in the food.
The biggest concern...
I think so too, because the water, when the tree absorbs the water for their nutrients, they go to the fruit or the vegetable. So they have to absorb something from the ground.
Well, so
the mercury has to be the mineral to go up to the food chain, to the trees and like that.
But regardless of all of that, okay, we have thousands of people in Stockton who fish out there in the Delta, and they're not just
I'm one.
They're not just, a lot of them are not just recreational.
Right.
They are actually subsistence fishermen, and so they are relying on the fish that they catch in the Delta as a part of their regular diet on an ongoing basis.
Right.
And so the state for many years has been very concerned about their exposure to fish that have high levels of mercury. There are certain species that are more
like the bird,
dangerous than others. The bass out in the Delta tend to be, because they gobble up. They're voraciously hungry.
Oh yes.
And they gobble up all those little.
Well, I know a lot of fishermen are now doing catch and release because of that issue.
Salmon is pretty safe, on the other hand, because they migrate out to the ocean and come back in, so they don't they don't spend their entire lives in these highly polluted waters in the Delta. So salmon and steelhead tend to be a little bit safer, but there are other species. And if anyone is interested in the details on that, if you just Google Delta fish advisories, probably I would guess the first hit would be the state's official listing of which species are considered to be safe and how often you can eat them. Because they're very specific guidelines depending on whether you're a man or a woman, somebody who might potentially, someone who could become pregnant.
Right, exactly.
So there's very specific guidelines, and you can look those up if anyone is interested.
And we're not getting enough information about this, and you reporting now. Can you share with us what are some of the main issues that you are or have reported on and future reporting?
Yeah, what's difficult about that is it's always been this way. And so at some point, and I've written about it, I've been here 12 years, and I've written about it, about mercury probably at least a dozen times. But you're right. I mean, you have to have kind of a consistent educational.
Yes.
Yeah. We should probably do more of those kinds of stories.
But I think people just kind of believe what other people believe that is not true. Oh, that's not true. That's not true. And they believe that lie. And just hearing you saying that for 12 years and nobody having really done anything about it, it's kind of scary.
Well, they're limited in what they can do. I mean, the mercury is there, and you can't just get it out again. So that happened, 150 years ago. Yeah,
right. Okay.
So that's just a problem. I don't think we can put the genie back in the bottle on that. But what we can do is make sure people have the information they need to make good decisions about what kind of fish they're going to eat. Right. And I do think the media, including myself, could do a better job of getting that information out there. And I think the state could do a better job as well, frankly.
Yeah, I agree with that.
They are, I believe they are in the process of putting up some new signs out at some of the marinas that will have some of this information. And we'll have it in multiple languages because a lot of the folks, I mean, we have a large Southeast Asian community in Stockton. And these are the folks primarily who are going out there and doing the subsistence fishing. So, you have to have... an outreach campaign that is going to reach them in their native language.
Well, we do have here in Stockton, for almost every native language, every culture, there is an organization. And I fully believe in taking information to the leadership of each one of those cultures. And like we have a Hispanic council, we have African American council, we have Asian councils. I don't know what the Hmongs have or the Samoans have, but I think what could be done is having an honest town hall educational discussion with each one of the groups. Because, like you're saying, a lot of the fishing that is done for subsistence is done by Asians. And do they understand what health issues there are in the fishing? And I think the only way to really get the information out, because you don't hear it on the news, on nightly news. A lot of people don't read the newspaper. And so you have to go directly, face to face with the people.
And I think they've been doing that. My understanding is there have been meetings, especially in recent years. And there are some groups that are focused specifically on this issue. So hopefully they're making progress. And that's one of these things that's very difficult to...
But the thing is that what you're saying is true, but they have the hidden agenda. That's what people are kind of concerned about, what their agenda is. They're telling the truth, but what is the hidden agenda is. Are they really saving the ton, or they're double parking behind the scenes that we don't know about? So obviously there's a mistrust issue. So
well, that's politics.
We're not talking about politics.
But that is a politics issue.
But I'm not talking about. I'm talking about just general people.
Yeah.
Politics and science, unfortunately, have a way of getting tangled up together.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's what I meant. Science
and a part of my job is to try to keep them separated, which I don't necessarily do very well. But
in the Stockton Record, do you have a nightly or daily section where your stories and your information can be found by the people?
No, I mean I'm a Metro reporter. So
and what does that mean?
It just means I'm a regular reporter like everyone else there. I don't have a special
It's like
column
a staff,
space
it's
or
like a
anything
staff
like that.
reporter, right?
You know, if something comes up that has an environmental bent, I'll go to my boss and I'll say, hey, I think we should write this story, and he'll say okay, and then they'll decide how to play that story compared with everything else that's going on that day. So it just that news gets mixed in with all the rest of the news. It doesn't get any special.
Alex, were you doing the story on seniors a year or so ago? 2 years ago?
It's possible. Do you remember more about it?
No, I just asked that because I was living at Casa Manana here in Stockton, a senior apartment complex, and someone shot a bullet through one of the windows. And, of course, I called the police and I called the Record to tell them about, because we'd had a lot of attacks against seniors. And the reporter that came out and took statements from myself and another young lady and took pictures, he said he was doing reports now on the issues of the assaults against seniors here in Stockton. And I was wondering if you had done any of that.
That doesn't sound like something I've done. I mean, we're small enough.
Right.
Like most newspapers, we've gotten a lot smaller over the years.
Oh, yes.
So, you know, I mean, I could be called to do just about anything on any given day. I'm by no means limited to environment issues. I write about almost everything else, depending on what happens to be going on at any given day.
Okay.
So
Now
I don't know who that was, but yeah.
Okay, before we go back into the topic. What do you think about Swanson Park, about the golf park? Did you think the environmental
Swenson Park.
What? Oh, Swenson Park.
You know,
Swenson.
I'm not the. I don't know much about it.
Okay.
I'm not the lead reporter on that story. I
nobody
will
are.
say, what's that?
Nobody aren't. They're not. I read the Stockton newspaper too, and I just heard about it on Facebook. It's not on the Stockton Record.
The agenda for the meeting tonight came out late last week, and my colleague Roger Phillips wrote a story that was published today.
Oh, okay.
So you're right. There was a big discussion about it on social media today, but we have covered it, and we've done stories in the past too. There have been suggestions that something like this might happen a few months ago, and we wrote stories at that time. So it didn't come from completely out of the blue, but I don't know much about it other than I will say one thing, and that is that folks are talking about the habitat values. I mean, this is putting on my environment hat here.
Okay.
Folks are talking about the habitat values of these golf courses, which is the idea that they are open spaces that could potentially provide habitat for birds, raptors, hawks, other critters, and I think that's true. And I'm not an expert, and I'd have to talk to a biologist. But I think that's one of the issues that will come up tonight. I
think because I know for me as a real estate agent, there are two different governments: the Subdivision Back Act and Subdivision Land Law. You know, the commissioner does that, and you have to at least have 10 days of note of hearing, and we did it to the last minute. Why it's not in 10 days? Not even 10 days last minute. So are they cutting back? Are they cutting corners, not following the rule of regulation of protocol and things like that regarding that issue? Because we can make the field like a water park, or it could be a learning facility and things like that.
Swenson Golf Course. I've lived in that area since 1950. As Lincoln Village, where it is located, has been building up. There is a waterway connected to it.
Oh,
there
really?
is a stream.
5
yes.
Mile Slough.
I remember as a child riding my bicycle back and forth from Colonial Heights to Lincoln Elementary.
Wow. Okay.
And we would be so happy when the stream was low, because we would ride our bicycles down the hill, into the stream and up the hill, because there's a little bridge there. But it is connected to an environmental
they've had
waterway.
Salmon. They've had salmon come up that slough.
And it is a golf course like that in a community, that's part of that community. And to turn it into houses is ridiculous, because you have to have environmental beautiful areas like a golf course like this is, or parks in a community to make it a community. And people from all over come there. People for years have been coming there.
Yes.
Now you think, I've been there since 1950. I've seen that golf course since it was first developed. And to have it leave? No way. No way.
So
because it is very important to our community.
So what do you think about any habitat or species rule that we have to follow? There's a lot of regulation on preventing to put that on hold before that vote, because that's a liability on their part. You know what I mean? That's going to be I don't think it probably will pass because it's money spent.
No, we're not going to say that. Not going to say that it probably will pass, because
it will
if it does, it's going to be a violation against the community. That's for sure.
I heard that somebody donated that part for recreation purpose. So how are they gonna? Then if they're gonna do that, they have to pay a settlement for some of that family that gave that.
I have no idea about that. I have no idea. But what you're talking about, Alex, with the environment,
right?
Okay. There is a great deal of environmental issues there. Like you're saying, that stream has fish. The stream is part of people's backyards. It's been there forever. Where it goes to, I don't know where do you know where it ends?
You know what? My understanding is it kind of dives underground. And it's I don't know that anyone does know where it ends exactly.
Well, I know there in Colonial Heights, where Hammer Lane is, there used to be a very large waterway there,
too. I remember that.
And that was another place I used to cross over all the time, and it was filled with water. And right there at Hammer Lane and Alexander was as far as Hammer Lane went back in the early 50s. And then they started building up Park Woods, more of Lincoln Village, and they started taking the road out further. And when they built Hammer Lane, that waterway, like you're saying, has gone underwater, I believe, too, because it is a waterway out to probably the Delta somewhere. Yeah. And it does have a lot of environmental issues, too, because there's a lot of birds there. There's the oak trees there. I don't know what kind of fish has been found in that stream, but I know it used to be a very large stream, and it came from the mountains.
I think the oak trees in particular are very good habitat, and a lot of our oak trees have been lost over the years. I'm not sure. I do think, though, on the other hand, I mean, a golf course is not natural habitat. If you go back into the 19th century, I mean, when half of Stockton was marshland, we drained all of that marshland. Mm-hmm. We cut down most of the riparian forests that lined our rivers and streams, which is why those oak trees are important.
Right.
So people say the golf course is habitat. I don't know if it is or if it isn't, and I'm not going to, without talking to a biologist, I'm not going to offer an opinion on that.
So you have access to the biology and all other stuff to why did they didn't send them then now then what, and just why did they get them on paper in the agenda to the public to see it? That, you know what I mean?
Well, when did Mayor Tubbs even start talking about this? This is the first time I heard about it when you sent me the text. I mean, not text, but you sent me a Facebook notice.
Well, I don't know if it's Tubbs, but I knew that it was last minute because they were going to have they can't do a meeting on the 14th, and they were going to do it the 7th because of the Christmas party. And they do it early because they did it Monday, but normally a regular meeting is on a Tuesday. So why they fall on a Monday, then not on the regular meeting on Tuesday? They're not getting.
Who knows?
So I don't know what the deal is. So I'm not sure what's happening. So, but my concern about that is the habitat. We need trees, and because there's so much pollution out there. I can't even breathe.
Well, it's recreation, and it's been here forever, and it's part of the community.
I agree with that. I totally agree with it, but they're not looking that way. Big developer is looking for housing for money, but you know what? Price of housing, nobody can afford it. Who is buying the houses? Investor.
Well, everything has money.
Okay.
You follow the money and you find out why, in most cases, right?
That's true. I agree with that.
So, getting kind of off onto this. But
it
is a very
a lot of
bad
people were talking about it all
issue.
weekend. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a big deal. I just don't. I mean, you know. I think I think there is habitat out there on those courses.
Yes.
In terms of the mature trees and 5 Mile Slough. I don't know. On the other hand, if
A lot of birds.
Yeah, birds.
Parrots.
But a golf course is not natural habitat in and of itself.
Right.
So I think we'd have to. I wouldn't offer an opinion without talking to a biologist in terms of the amount of value that those courses offer.
Okay, but that's
So,
a good honest
in
opinion.
writing about this, Alex, what would you be looking at as a reporter?
On this particular,
If you were writing in a sense that there is a value of environment, and would this, if they removed that and started building houses, what would happen to that wonderful stream and all of the foliage and everything that's been growing there for years and years and years? And the stream goes right past Spano's house, too, right down Lincoln Road, and Lincoln High School, and it's part of the beauty of the whole community.
right.
So, when you would be writing about something like this, what would you be writing about?
Well, it's a hard thing to write about because you have. No one can say for sure.
Right.
It would depend on what they did out there, and it would depend on how they did it. So you could. I always try to talk to people who are not involved on something like this. If it's the habitat issue that we're talking about, like I said, I would want to talk to biologists who might offer an opinion. But even that would be to some extent speculative because we don't know exactly what is going to happen out there. It's like the tunnels. The tunnels, the Delta tunnels, are the ultimate. Nobody really knows what the Delta tunnels are going to do to the Delta. So you can only allow experts to predict impacts.
Right.
And whether that's how it really turns out or not, I don't know.
Well, that's good. I think that's good because that's something that a lot of people are concerned about their environment because it's getting hotter, it's getting warmer. We're getting no tree. Trees are dying because of no water. Alex, what can you do? Is the government doing something about making rain, making cloud? Are they doing something? Because somebody told me in somewhere in Merced that there's a lot of government that are flying over the sky and trying to produce clouds and make it rain.
Cloud seeding, yeah. I know that. I think PG&E has done some cloud seeding up in the Sierras. You don't hear a lot about that these days. What you hear most often is people say we should build more reservoirs. That's what the kind of the most common thing to capture the rain that we do get and the snowmelt that we get. But a lot of the good places to do that.
We do need to have to make them a new reservoir to add the reserve for that.
But a lot of the good places have already been dammed. And there aren't really a whole lot of places.
What about groundwater? They say they're empty, but I don't believe it's empty. And when rain goes there, they're sucked in. So are they pumping up all of it?
So groundwater is a big problem. Groundwater is supposed to be like our savings account. So when we should say what groundwater is, because I think a lot of people don't understand it.
Exactly.
The groundwater is the water beneath our feet in the ground, in the aquifer, which I guess is self-explanatory.
Right.
And this is water that there's huge volumes of water down there. Local San Joaquin County officials have told me that they think there's enough room in the ground beneath our feet to store an additional amount of water equal to the capacity of Folsom Lake. So there's a lot of potential. And I think what they want to do is they want to find a way to take some of this water that we get during very wet years like last year and divert it out of our rivers when we're about to flood out, right?
Right, okay.
And put it in the ground.
Okay.
So that, we're taking it and storing it during wet years and then it'll be available during dry years. So there's been a lot of talk about trying to get projects like that started. And there have been a few modest steps toward accomplishing that here locally, but there's a long way to go. We just don't have the infrastructure right now to be able to take advantage of that water. If you just look last week, the Calaveras River was running so high that the bike path, portions of the bike path, were underwater.
Right.
Oh, I remember Calaveras flooding over.
And this seems counterintuitive because
I totally agree with that.
Because it's been dry.
Of course, it's sharp.
And the reason that the rivers were running so high and are still running high is because they have to create more room in the reservoirs in case it starts raining.
I know that Tom Patty was talking about with a lake, a reservoir of Monsomi It's right by
Maloney's.
Maloney.
Yes, Maloney's.
So what happened? Did they
So-
divert water out of that? That was our reservoir too, right?
Maloney's is a huge reservoir. It's one of the biggest reservoirs in the state, and it is where we get a share of our drinking water here in Stockton. And farmers on the east side of the county are dependent on it as well. And because it's so big, it takes a long time to fill Maloney's back up after a drought.
Right.
So it got really, really low. I
Yes.
want to say it was down in the teens in terms of the percentage capacity.
That's a scary moment.
And-
To me, that's scary. That's really scary.
Yeah, I mean, you
I'm gonna
see
move
these
to.
old-
I'll probably have to move to Alaska or Oregon where there's not a lot
Yeah,
of
you
rain.
see these old bridges all of a sudden start to emerge, and all the old towns and everything. Yeah, it was spooky, but an amazing thing, and no one expected this last year. We started getting those atmospheric river storms shortly after, right after the New Year's in early January, and we got pounded by these storms one after another.
Good.
January, February, and New Melones actually virtually filled up last year, which no one expected that to happen. No one I've spoken with,
Right on.
and that speaks to how much rain we got.
Yes,
and
definitely.
and that's good, but then you have to also consider, okay, we're about to head back into that January, February, March timeframe again, and New Melones is now something like I think it's like 80% full, and it's 100 and I'm throwing these numbers out there. I'd have to look 130% of normal or something like that.
Well,
So
now-
the cushion, New Melones
Yeah.
saved us from some pretty substantial flooding last year, and that cushion is now gone because the lake is basically full.
Okay.
So that's why you see these releases right now, and some of these rivers are coming up, is because they sit down and they think, hey, if we get hit by storms this year like we did last year, we don't have the room in the reservoirs this
So
time.
what you were talking about is how they're talking about how to preserve the water that they would have to release, just like when during the rain period that one reservoir the dam broke and
The
people got
spillway, yeah.
flooded.
Yeah.
Which one was that?
Are you talking about Oroville last year?
Yes, Oroville.
Yeah, they had
and
problems
all
with
that,
the
all
spillway.
that water was lost.
Yeah.
I mean, it went. And,
It is a constant balancing act between saving as much water as you can in those reservoirs, because we know we're going to have future droughts and we don't want to just dump water for the sake of dumping it. Right. It's a balance between that and making sure we don't have a catastrophic flood, because this is an extremely flood-prone community. We got off pretty lucky last year with just some relatively minor issues. We did have evacuations down in Manteca when the levee on the east bank of the San Joaquin broke, which was a big deal.
So
Luckily, nothing came out of that.
I remember many times driving out to Kings Island out there off at the 8 Mile, and it just was getting higher and higher. The Sacramento River, when you cross the one huge bridge that opens up, it was very high. And I have friends that live in the mobile park there at King Island at the end of 8 Mile Road. And they're right on the delta. And it was getting higher and higher. I went out to see my friend. I said, my goodness gracious, it looks like it's only a foot from the top of the levee right now.
Okay, now before you go into, we're going to the new year now to next year. Are we going to be having El Nino coming? Because we wouldn't have that much or whatever water rain.
We're in a La Nina.
La Nina,
Which is so that's the opposite of El Nino. I almost said it wrong. My tongue got all
That's a sister.
That's the opposite. Yeah. So El Nino is when the waters in the Pacific Ocean near the equator are warmer than usual, which tends to fuel very wet storms that hit the especially Southern California, but us up here as well. And La Nina, La Nina is the opposite.
Okay.
Where it's cold, it's cooler than usual.
Oh, really?
So you have the potential to have
snow?
drier conditions
Okay.
in Southern California and then wetter in the Pacific Northwest.
Okay.
There's lots of other factors. It's not just about El Nino or La Nina. There's longer-term climate patterns in the ocean, and there's short-term patterns as well. So there's a lot that goes into the question of whether we have a wet year or not. And I think the jury is still out on that. But it is interesting that it's been so dry so far. I just looked on Friday, and this is Stockton's, so far, This has been Stockton's driest fall since 2005.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So I mean, we've gotten less than an inch of rain.
It's almost been like spring some days.
Yeah, we've gotten less than an inch of rain all season so far, and the forecast is extremely dry through, mid-December, I think at least, maybe later. And again, that could all turn around in January, and we could get hit by these crazy storms again. We don't know.
I hope so, because we had a lot of rain. I mean, fire in our acre. I mean, tremendous arson, that fire that really messed up our atmosphere. So,
but I will tell you, I am actually relieved that it's been dry so far, because I was worried about repeat flooding this year.
Right.
And every day that it's dry in December is probably a good thing.
Yeah.
As long as it's not dry in January, February, and March.
Right.
So as long as I think if we get a reasonable amount of rain in January, February, March, we can have a dry. This is not going to be an issue for us.
Okay.
In fact, it's probably a good thing because it helps them clear out some room.
Well, at
in
least
those reservoirs.
until the state decides on how are they going to reserve the excess water when we do have large storms, because that is when I saw them having to release water, and I thought, oh my God. Because we've been in drought, and where is that water going, and
water.
how it could be used, and
because
it's always in the back of my mind of don't destroy the delta,
right,
and reserve water that we get plenty of from the natural resources, but do not touch the delta. I'm very
okay.
That is one of the.
We could talk more, and we're almost at the end of our show. I would love to have you back, Alec. It's been a very informative discussion. I really appreciate you coming, and honor for you to come. So I hope we would come back again.
Sure.
Talk about
I enjoyed it. Thanks for having me. It's always fun to talk about this stuff.
Good. So thank you. Thanks for watching KXVS, the voice of Stockton. Thank you so much for everything, and I hope you learned something. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye bye.
Goodbye.
This program does not reflect the views of KXVS management or KXVS, the voice of Stockton.
KXVS, the voice of Stockton, live. The voice of Stockton at Stone Soup's